Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Metaphysical Network for Conscious Living. My name is Lorraine Jensen, and I'm your host. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Thomas Trafford. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Welcome. Hello.
We've had a little chat for the past 5 minutes, and I love him already. And his topic today is the Sacred Heart.
Hmm.
Thomas will be speaking at the Unitarian Fellowship Hall at 595 Townsite Road on December the 19th at 7 p.m. We ask that you bring $15 in a cash donation, please. Now, let me tell you about the Metaphysical Network for Conscious Living. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Thomas's talk, and then we're going to get down to the good stuff. So, the Metaphysical Network for Conscious Living helps people seeking community, connection, and spiritual development to feel inspired and empowered by providing enlightening experiences through seminars, workshops, fairs, and conferences. Now,
Hmm.
Thomas Trafford is an intuitive counselor, medium, and coach, and he helps people live their lives with more clarity, peace, and satisfaction by helping them clear out old, stuck energies out of their auric field. Pretty fascinating already. He goes on to say that there is no doubt that we are all experiencing massive shift on the planet right now,
Hmm.
right?
And how? Yeah.
Yeah. These are times of change, both internally in our idea of our lives and ourselves, but also what we perceive externally. And I love that word perceive. You
Hmm.
know, become what we make, we become what we believe.
Yes,
And that
exactly.
external thing is so, and the perception of the external, as well as the perception of the internal, massive. As our experience of reality continues to change, unravel, and alter on both fronts, things can become loud, uncertain, and confusing. Great
Hmm.
choice of words. So
Thank
he
you.
says, let's discuss how we can best navigate these fluid times, knowing that we are here for our own expansion and that of others.
Hmm.
How many of us think we're here to be in service to everybody else and forget about ourselves?
Right.
Especially intuitives and empaths and,
Hmm.
like that is a weekend workshop on its own, wouldn't you agree?
Totally. Yes.
Or a
Yes.
month. As change makers and sensitives, how do we honor our growth and maintain our purpose as the landscape keeps shifting on every front?
Hmm. Right. I mean, it's a big topic, but
It
it
is
is.
a big topic. So, Thomas, tell me about you. How did you how did you end up here? I understand you come from the corporate world. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I come from the corporate world, and I come from back east. So I'm originally Toronto, born and raised. And yeah, I mean, I guess I don't need to spend too much time there, but my training is in design, graphic design. I went to visual arts high school, and am a trained painter. And I had dreams of being a painter, but the reality of the world got to me. So I went into design and ended up going into marketing and advertising, as so many do. And listen, I really loved it, but some things started to happen there for me. It was a wonderful cosmic confluence, where I guess the fates and my higher self had a different plan for me. Um, I've always been curious about sort of sensitivities to other realms, and curious about you know things that typically would be a little bit more witchy or a little bit more paranormal. That's been lifelong, and but always just thought of it more as a, I don't know, as an interest or a fascination than a calling, so to speak. And then, so as I was at work and would a couple of things happen, I started to get really allergic to the idea of um, using my skill set to help people purchase something that they didn't necessarily need. And not only that, but purchase something that would end up in a landfill, or something like it would be wasteful to the earth. It started to feel incongruous with what a human life should be, or felt, at least to me, that, I'm like, shouldn't we be stewards of the earth, and shouldn't we be helping uplift each other? It didn't make sense to sort of bamboozle someone into a sale, for metrics
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
for dollars. So that started to really get to me. And simultaneously, I would look around the boardroom in the office and I'd be like, but you're not doing well. You're not doing well. You're like none of us are doing well. So what authority do we feel we have to sit around this boardroom and plan like the back to
Yeah.
school campaign for millions of Canadians without like realizing like we're not okay, and shouldn't that be our concern,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
right, like I'm all for the chugging, along of society and capitalism, but it just seems like it might be failing us a little bit, and if we end up with a reality where we're all white knuckling it through life, it doesn't seem like we did ourselves justice. There's more to us than that. So that really sparked the curiosity for the internal world and how we carry ourselves throughout the world, and how we navigate our own sticky points and our successes and our family issues and bridges we burned and choices we've made and all of that, right? Simultaneously, like around 2010, I lost 4 people within 6 months, and so I was deep into grief, and it was an unknown, a yet unexperienced depth that I felt, and I was shocked at how isolating and lonely and, and cold and deep it could really be. My lifelong anxiety came back tenfold, and I was panic attacking myself to sleep essentially, and I was like, this can't be right. Like this isn't what human, especially having a lifetime of believing in, fairies and magic and Neverland, and I was like, this doesn't match. So
Right.
it began. That was essentially my dark night of the soul, and it began my um, intentional investigation into these areas that had always interested me, but never to this degree. And and by doing that, you start to, the first couple of things people learn about on their spiritual journey and synchronicities, I think is something that anyone listening could understand. You see angel numbers or synchronicities, or the song comes on the radio at the right time or whatever, and and just having those and noticing them and realizing that like the universe is sort of talking back to you, like you're not alone in there, and so that relationship became very interesting to me, because it is ultimately the biggest one, or the one of most impact. You could even, like, if I may be so bold, you could say the only one, right, is really our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with the universe. It informs and guides and is our relationship with everyone else, but ultimately it comes back down to you and how you feel about you and how you feel about the world. And that point you were making about perception, it just really hit home to me in a way that I've never been able to come off of that. So it is one of the tenets of my teachings, is like the way that you perceive yourself and therefore perceive the world. It's going to include all of your beliefs structure from growing up, from, it's going to include everything that a friend has influenced or anything like that. And until you look at that and start to either affirm it or dismantle it, but it needs attention, it needs vigilance, right? So
Yeah.
you peel back the onion and you're like, oh, there's more, there's more, there's more, there's more. And that work becomes so freeing, because there's what you're actually doing is you're reclaiming your authentic self. You're discovering who you actually are, because you've had a lifetime perhaps of not asking questions, or, well, grandma said we believe this, so that's what we believe, and we always go to church on Christmas, and what do you mean? And so we didn't really ever get told to like investigate that. So digging around in there can be sticky, obviously. I think that's where we meet the stuck energies.
Yeah.
Oh, I am jealous for that reason.
Oh, I
Oh,
don't like
shoot.
that.
Yes. And I think we all want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that served many of us for a very long time. I think what's happening now, where I would reinsert this sort of energies happening globally into this, is that we can no longer,
Yeah.
I listen, I get that it is like hard to look in the dark corners. Um, I think that's where, when I speak about the Sacred Heart, that's where we bring in the compassion. It's almost universal compassion, universal grace, the grace that you would imagine in the scene from the movie on your deathbed, where the white light comes and the angel comes to get you, and there's no, you're not like in trouble, you're not wrong at that point, you're just being held by existence. Like in that space we can be who we really are, and if we can spend enough time there to figure that out, we can start to like reinsert little pieces of it along the way in our daily lives. and things sort of start to get a little better, and I'm a little bit happier at the end of this week. And all I did was do a 10-minute meditation each morning, but suddenly I'm feeling like I have more clarity about how I feel about, and that
Everything.
rolls
Yeah.
and rolls and rolls. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how I got to where where I am now. And somewhere in there, there was a move to Vancouver Island after the sort of fall from the ivory tower of marketing. And I knew I wanted to be around the ocean. I wanted to be around nature so much more. And it's really helped for me to sort of root this version of myself. And it feels much more aligned. Speaking of that, I mean, if you had told me 5 years ago when I was, at the office doing a campaign for Christmas that I would be here doing this, I wouldn't have been able to understand why or believe you. But so I think we often can surprise ourselves with who we actually are. And I think, isn't that worth investigating to me?
Well, and I think it's just trusting.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like trusting the messages that come. I get messages so consistently, it's crazy. And then I'm
Mm,
like, what are you doing here? And then
right,
the surprise when it actually happens,
right,
right? But
right.
now when I see somebody, I go, oh, that looks like such and such. I know I'm going to see them or hear from them in the coming future. And
Yes,
the more I recognize it, the closer it becomes, the closer it gets. Like
yes,
now I think about somebody and the phone rings and I'm like, oh yeah, hi, I was just picking up the phone to call you.
yes,
And I
exactly.
still think, wow, that's freaky. No, it's not. It's been
It's
happening
not
your whole life.
right. Yeah, and
Accept it, embrace it.
yes, accept it and embrace it. The trust, you nailed it. That's the number one rule, honestly, or the number one thing I teach when I'm teaching clients is that, like, the it sounds so simple and it almost sounds like unimportant, but without the trust to a level that you don't even think is possible, you aren't going to. The trust equals the connection to source and to spirit and to the other world. Trusting your being and that you're okay as you are and that everything that's happening is for some sort of reason. And it doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be painful. They are emotions, they're energy in motion. They leave us eventually. So when you start to sort of like the wisdom of understanding that life experience gives you, and you're like, okay, this too shall pass. And I'm seeing that. And you know what? There was an interesting conversation there. And I keep thinking about it. So maybe I should circle back because maybe there's some work for me and her to do together. And, you start to sort of realize how much you are also involved in driving the car of your life. You're not just a passenger.
Yes.
And
And
it gets
I,
really interesting to play with.
I got a message the other day. I was doing my breathing exercises and breathing exercise, and I'm planning, in my quiet just breathe exercises, I'm planning the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And a message came through. It was so clear. It was just like, get out of the way.
Beautiful.
And I was
That's
like,
powerful.
no, but I could take that on. And I had to
Hmm.
keep, now I'm reminded, just get out of the way.
Hmm.
Move over,
Hmm.
you
And we're
know?
so wired. I mean, I know recently in the past sort of 5 to 10 years, especially in the esoteric communities, ego's been such a hot topic and a big word. But we have to appreciate that the ego allows us to understand our lives as separate individual beings, and it also is meant to protect us. So it makes sense that it comes in at those moments. But when you start to gain the sort of higher perspective that can say, like, you're not helping right now. Just get out of the way. Just sit down. Like, that's where the trust comes in. And the thing that is always coupled with the trust is surrender. And I think that's sort of what we're talking about here. Like, it's so hard to we really need the control to feel safe, right, in our
Yeah,
lives.
yeah,
And so the idea of relinquishing it to an authority or a higher power that you don't necessarily even know the result, and you're just going like, okay, I guess it'll be fine by virtue of what? It's hard to do for people. And I think the surrender becomes such a valuable part of it.
oh,
Just sort of
absolutely.
allowing the flow, and then because you surprise, life will surprise you. You'll surprise yourself. I
Yes.
was remarking to someone recently, I've spent my entire life, I love dogs. I was never allowed to have a dog. From 3 years old, I've asked for one. And I was never allowed to have one. But my parents even like felt bad about that. So they took me dog sledding. There was like, and neighbors and other people had dogs, and dogs were always in my life, and everyone knew that I loved them. And I now have two of my own and I love them very much. But I was mortified about it 2 years ago when I was doing some meditation. And I was like, but why is this relationship with my cat feeling more powerful and more true to who I am. And my guides were like, well, you're a cat person. I don't know why you thought you were a dog person for 35 years. And I was like, it, I couldn't believe how much it sort of shattered some version of my
Yeah.
self-image. And
Yeah.
I was like, but I can't not be a dog person. I've told everyone that since I was a child. But like I've just had to accept that I guess I'm more of a cat person. And like even something that small, it's wild how
Yes.
much we hold on to what we've the stories and the definitions and the beliefs that we've made for ourselves and our own narratives, right?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
totally hear
and
you.
we've given as well, right?
Yes,
We've taken on the beliefs from our parents and, and everybody else along the way. And,
yes, exactly.
you know, you don't know what you don't know. When all I know is this, when all I know is this, I'm not going to live outside of that, am I? Because I
Right.
didn't know that there's something out there.
Right. And so the curiosity becomes such a beautiful part of it to me. I mean, I always like to use other words. I say gentle curiosity, or graceful vulnerability. Like because to dig around in our dark corners and to clear our cobwebs, like we were saying before, it is sticky. It's a little uncomfortable. You don't want to realize that maybe you did something out of spite or, things like that. But if we can work to apply that sweetness to it, that sort of soulful, angelic grace to it, then it does become more of a lesson in curiosity. All you're doing is really investigating. Do I still believe the thing I was told when I was 3, or do I not?
Yeah.
Do I need something else? Is there something else I could learn? Why don't I go ask some new people or get some books or look, you know, it allows an openness that I think is necessary for us to really see the full picture of who we are in that heart space.
Is this thought or action or way of living supporting what it is that I want in my life?
Exactly.
Because if I
Exactly.
grew up not trusting men and wanted a happy, healthy marriage, I didn't stand a chance,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And
That's exactly right.
and how many people walk into relationships with that belief and walk out being right about the fact that I knew this wasn't going to work? Well, why
Uh,
bother walking in the first place?
Right. And didn't you just do a really good job proving that to yourself? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You never got to be right again. I could
Yeah.
talk for days on that subject. But I want to ask you a question based on what you do. And
Mm,
you said that you clear out old stuck energies out of the auric field. Now, I'll tell you why this excites me so much because in my line of work, I'm a realtor. I'm also a facilitator. And so what
okay.
I do is I help people to uncover the stories that we've just been
Mm,
talking about that are stopping them from creating what it is they want in their lives. But
mm.
you're talking about releasing that from the auric field. So you're taking it to the next level.
Yes, exactly. I like to examine all of the bodies. If you think the emotional body, the spiritual body, as well as the physical. In our chat before we pressed record, we were talking about sort of somatic and how you hold things in the body, right, on the physical level. But that can all, for me, at least the way I see it, like the physical form is it's the most material, it's the most dense of all of our forms, but I sort of see it like a inverse like pyramid going upward, right? So our higher self having the most purview and the most breadth. And then you sort of go down, into the emotional body, the angelic body, whatever, until you come to the physical body. So it makes sense that even something up as high as that is still sort of sticky in your energy field. It could be past life. It could be from a lifetime in another star system. It could be, there are so many ways that it can um, come in, but it will trickle down. And then you have that pain in your knee for 30 years and you never really had a knee injury. But it's like, well, yeah, but let's look at all the things that can be. Let's look at your past life story. Let's look at your soul signature resonance. We all have like almost a 10-foot Merkaba around us that includes our aura, right? So I always think about that when I'm in a crowded space or a subway train. And I'm like, but if we all have that much more energy pattern around us, like a sphere around us, think about how enmeshed you are in other people's energies before you get off that subway train. No wonder you can get on happy and leave in a bad mood, right? So
Or the other way around.
or the other way around. Absolutely. I shouldn't have gone negative for that. Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
it's true, right? We get out and we go,
Hmm.
oh geez. It's like walking into a room.
Hmm. Yes. And you immediately know,
We
right?
walk into a room and go, ooh,
Yes.
Oh, I bet it
Or
cheered
you immediately
everybody
know
up.
who you want to talk to. You go, that person. That person is the only person not giving me the same feeling everyone else is. I'm drawn over there. That is like beyond our physicality, right? That is in our energy field.
Yeah.
And so often I find so much of my work and so many of our work that we're called to do, but it it really does come down to the stories we tell ourselves and the limiting beliefs that we hold. And I think that even some of those can come through in our dormant DNA. They can be past life. We often travel through lifetime after lifetime with the same soul group. So maybe it's not necessarily your mom now, but it's your mom's energy signature because you're remembering that on some level from 5 lifetimes ago when she sold you off and reported and you got burned at the stake or something like that, you know? So there is so much more to look at that informs how we hold ourselves, or even back to the perception, how we perceive things, our sense of right and wrong. I'm never try to be prescriptive, and I try as much as I can to avoid judgment, even though it is a human um, necessity sometimes. But you know, even the way people value things, like people's value structure, and you're sort of like, well, where did that come from? So for me, it's a big onion. It's a big onion layer peeling. And if you're asking yourself why, the why always gets you to the next layer. Well, why that? Okay, well, let's look under that hood.
Always.
Well, why that? Look under that hood. And you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, well, now we should probably do a passive aggression. Now we should probably, like try to meditate and talk to your spirit guides. There are other entities that are in this room with you, right?
Yeah.
And there are other influences from other realms that create the totality of who you experience as a human being walking around the earth. So let's explore all of that and every possibility to help you reframe who you even are. That's the crux of so much of my work. I often will say to people, well, in the first session, like let's start with what you think you are. Are you a primate that evolved opposable thumbs in language and culture and came out of the forest, or are you a divine being that's having a physical experience on a planet to learn lessons and in contrast and desire? Maybe it's all the above. Let's figure that out. So from there you can sort of see where to go. And eventually you do get to a place where even with that curiosity, that gentle gentle curiosity, they can be if statements. If that's true, well, what does that mean then? If that's true, what does that mean then? And you're almost coming up with scenarios, but it's like, see how that's a different version of the life you're living. And all that changed there was believing that you could, or believing that it was worth it. And so it really helps just dissolve all of that stuck energy and allow people to step into their power, which is their authentic self. We're all far more beautiful, magical, and powerful than I think we give ourselves credit for. And that's sort of another thing that I like to dismantle in my work. It's curiosity with a purpose for you to be healthier on your way out the door.
Love it.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. So that evening, then, I mean, I could sit here and talk with you all day. This has just been lovely.
Oh,
And
thank you.
so the evening of the 19th, what would that look like?
Well, I have a lot more planned in terms of on this topic. I think I'm going to dive in a little deeper. I'm going to go into some of my own personal practices, for which are simple but joy making. So I'm gonna share from a very vulnerable heart, and I'm going to trust, as I know to do, that the ripples of that cosmically and with everyone else's energy that will be in the room, I think it will be quite beautiful, what people will be able to take away. And hopefully some of those practices will plant some seeds and maybe people can try it as we're going along. And yeah, and maybe leave with just a refreshed perspective. That's what I'm hoping for.
I love it. I love it. So I just want to ask you, do you have anything upcoming over the next little while that you'd like to promote here?
No, not this year, actually. I usually do a seminar in January. I'm not going to be running it this year. I'm taking stock of things and I'm sort of pivoting a little bit. So there's some stuff in the works for later in 2025, but my usual New Year thing is not going to be happening. So I would tell everyone to stay tuned and check the website as much as possible, www.thecedarwoodsanctuary.com. sorry.ca. Apologies. And also on Instagram under the same name, the Cedarwood Sanctuary. And I'll be posting all of the stuff that I have in the works. I'm looking for some meditations are going to be released later in the year. I've been told I have a voice for radio, so hopefully this deep melodic voice will do very well with some channel meditations, and also some classes coming up as well. I'd like to do some
Wonderful.
online classes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think you have a great voice
Oh, thank you so much,
and a
Lorraine.
great smile.
Oh, thank you.
And just for all the single women that have been asking if you are single, he is not single. That was my first question. And I did that
Sadly.
for you. Okay. So, like I said, I could sit here and chat with you for hours. And I really look forward to being at the event on the 19th. And so between now and then, I look forward to what's going to happen.
Yeah, me too.
All the
Thank you so much.
synchronicities. We're going to walk in the door and continue the conversation that we started before we
Exactly.
started here.
Exactly.
Okay, so once again, everybody, please join us on December the 19th, Thursday evening at 7 p.m. at the Unitarian Fellowship Hall in Nanaimo at 595 Townsite Road. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so
So
much,
nice
Lorraine.
to meet you, and I'll see
Nice
you
to meet
on
you
the
too.
19th.
Okay.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.